So I'm showing my Rosetta workspace. This is actually has already been contributed and will be available this week in Rosetta. And it's already available in the Rosetta portal. So you can see just to give some background on this so people know about this proposal. We already had in the summer of last year an initial work that actually Brian and Lynn developed around the inclusion of floating rate index definition. So this includes metadata information relevant to the floating rate options that ISDA publishes as part of the definitions. And after that, what we identified is a set of gaps of data points that we wanted to add to this floating rate index definition model based on the most recent 2021 definitions that ISDA published. So what we have done is identify a set of fields that we wanted to include as part of this floating rate index definition model. To include metadata information around the FROs that we think is valuable information that we can include as part of the reference data model. So going back to the workspace that we contributed, you see the differences here between the original floating rate index definition that we had since the summer of last year and the new fields that we had added to support the new 2021 devs. The main changes that we have is the way we identify the definitions using the supported definition type instead of the enum with a list of definitions that were part of the ISDA publications. We have expanded that, and we'll go through that in a minute. We have expanded that to cover identification of the actual documents and the different versions of that. We already had some fields related to things like mappings to other standards like ISO, for example, or some of the calculation defaults to be able to do the calculation of calculation parameters and calculation functions based on the floating rate option. But we have added additional information, for example, a Boolean flag to indicate whether the floating rate index is used in the loan market, the history to have like when this FRO was initially published, when it was removed, if it was. So the whole history around these FROs, and this takes especially relevance around the LIBOR cessation and the new RFRs rates. So we have the history of each one of these FROs. The administrator, so this is something that was already raised in the 2021 definitions around the benchmarks for what's the administrator of that. If it was deprecated, the rate was deprecated, the reason for that. And finally, the description to the FPML description to link these codes back to the publication of the coding schemes in FPML that contain these values. So going to the actual definition, let me maybe switch to the portal. What we have is the list of supported definitions, and this changes the actual enum that we had, and it has an expanded model, actually using the identifier of the legal agreement model that we had in as part of the collateral work that we introduced. But the idea is to identify the document more precisely, so we can have the actual type containing the list of the definitions that are published, so 2021 definitions, 2006 definitions, 2000 definitions, and so on, and then the version. And the version takes especially importance with the 2021 definitions, since, as you know, there are multiple versions of the same definitions. So we have like version 1, 2, 3, 4 that are published and more coming. The idea is that an FRO can be published in one of these specific versions. We can identify that. We can link that to a specific unique identifier of the actual document. If we have a unique identifier for each one of these documents, so we can use that. And then finally, the publication date in which the document has been published, a specific version or a specific document where this gets published. So this is kind of the expanded model to identify the supported definition.